Welcome to the Outer Realm with MicheleDerocher and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folklore Coffee who have been a part of our journey for probably about 5 years now. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Also, big thank you to Justice Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Big thank you also to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does phenomenal commission pieces. So tonight we welcome back who I like to call a fan favorite because she's been on the show a couple times, quite a few years ago now. But tonight she returns and she's going to be discussing her new book, Celtic Fairies in North America. So, right, I just thought that was kind of cool. So, I know.
She's awesome.
Oh, she really is. I mean, we had a lot of fun with her. I just see we're having some issues here on, let me see, on our YouTube page. So, we're going to re-add it and go from there and see what happens.
We'll blame Joe.
Yeah. Okay, we are live. Okay, good. So, wow. Anyway, Morgan, let me just grab her bio because I'm slacking off a little bit here. She teaches classes on Irish myth and magical practices. I would do that. Fairies related subjects in the United States and internationally. She has published multiple anthologies as well as Witches and Pagans magazine and Pagan Dawn magazine, and she's one of the world's foremost experts in all things fairy. I love it. And
Perfect time of year.
I know. So besides the titles through Moon Books, Morgan also has a high fantasy novel, Into Shadow, through Cosmic Egg, and she has self-published books of Old and Middle Irish language transition and has an urban fantasy paranormal romance series called Between the Worlds. She has also presented papers on fairies and on fairies and witches at several different universities. So she really knows her stuff. And guys, we are still fighting with the Outer Realm Facebook page. Go figure. So kind of maybe think about joining us on just come to our YouTube page, or that's probably all we're at for Facebook right now. Mind you, with that being said, a lot of people say that they can still see us on Facebook. So I don't know. It's maybe the soundboard is glitching. So with that being said, we've got people coming in. Hello, Heidi.
Yes.
Hello,
Crazy.
Kathy. No, you're pretty much on time, Richard. You're doing all right.
Yeah, early.
Not rewinding, just starting. I promise.
You're good.
Just starting.
Yeah.
I know. Great timing indeed. Hello, Janie. Hello. Yes,
So nice to see everybody because I didn't expect it with the holiday tomorrow. But thank you all for being here.
I know. And
seriously,
what isn't our favorite dish, Janie? I don't know. We're pretty.
dish.
I know.
For Thanksgiving.
Favorite dish, yeah.
Well, we had Thanksgiving in October.
That's what she said. But what's your favorite dish?
Oh, not turkey.
No, I don't think we ever do turkey either, to
I
be
don't
honest.
like turkey. I mean,
I know.
we didn't have turkey in our house until my brother started dating a Canadian girl. I'm literally, no, seriously, because Italians don't celebrate. We celebrate in November, and it's a harvest thing with the new wine, and it's a saint thing. It's one of those, right? So, like, you have the new wine, you have chestnuts, you have your harvest and all your root vegetables, and you have like comfort food.
Yes,
But
I'm just
we grew
getting
up
our
on lasagna
yeah, I know.
until he dated her and he ended up marrying her, and then turkey came in. But my dad would make prime rib for the rest of us.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But
There we go.
what do you
Okay.
do for Thanksgiving? You do roast usually, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Okay, there. Sorry, I had to get
About being together.
the link. So
Yeah.
our guest is sitting here waiting, and it's just
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, and I'm just rambling.
no, there was a problem with the link. So she's probably waiting for the link, and the link
Yes.
wasn't arriving.
Okay. Understood. Yeah.
I think it's a Mercury retrograde sort of day.
Oh, for the love of, is it again?
I
Why
think
is
we're
this
there.
one always around?
I don't know. I just wish it wasn't.
All right.
I'm down. I'm
so
down for
done
not.
with it.
I know. I'm down for not, and that's that. So
I'm
okay,
scared.
we're back live. Okay, good.
I'm scared to make like serious decisions. I'm scared. I'm scared to cancel a subscription streamer. Like, it's just one of those things right now. It's like I was canceling something yesterday and I was like, should I do this or should I wait? Maybe I'm not like, it's so stupid.
It's really
It's so
pain.
dumb.
Yeah, it is a pain. Really, it is. So okay. So hold on. All right. I think we're good. All right.
Yay.
Gosh, all of these locations are having an issue. So remember, guys, we do have like 8 locations. So it's like a super highway. Again, I have to say, coming down to 1 lane. So let's try to be patient. I will go ahead and try to flash as many of your comments as I can. And I will put up questions, but we have to keep in sync with Morgan. So I will put some questions up. Just because I'm not putting them up right away, it doesn't mean I'm not tagging them to be asked when we get to that point. But I will flash comments up there as always. And this way she can see the comments, we can see the comments, and everybody watching can see the comments. Remember, we're on Roku TV. Remember, we're on X, we're on Rumble, we're on 2 YouTube channels, a couple of Facebook channels. So you can most certainly find us somewhere. And if not, catch the archives. They will be everywhere. We're on over 200 different sites. So you will find it, I promise. Without further ado, our lovely guest, Morgan Daimler. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Good to be back.
It's been too long. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Wow. Good. I mean, Thanksgiving tomorrow. So a lot of people are really hyped up and excited.
Yep, that's why it's so messy behind me.
Right.
No, I was going to say, I love your background. Like, I could just fall asleep there. I love books. So
yeah, this is the right place then.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, you should have books.
I know.
You have a lot more that you can't see out of frame.
Oh, I love that.
That's okay. It's great.
I love
it's a beautiful thing. Did you see the book Christmas Tree meme? They actually have books layered like a tree.
Yes, I love that.
All the favorites. It's really pretty.
I thought about doing it, but I'd end up wanting to read one that was on the bottom.
You have to pick.
Always
you have to plan it for next year and
way.
pick the ones that you just read. And it always will be something that you need to grab right from the tree.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love it. But I'm so excited that you're here because I learned so much when you're on, and I love all of your discussions, and you're an amazing teacher like Michelle. So I'm going to sit back and just listen, and then if you don't mind, I'll ask a few questions because this is new to me.
Okay, it's a fun topic, so definitely.
Yes, I loved it last time you were on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It was great. I've always had a fascination with fairies, of course, and throughout the years being within the field of high strangeness, as I call it, people would send me pictures, and to me, I'm looking at them going, It looks like a spark in the air.
They got pictures.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie. I've seen one once.
A fairy or a picture?
No, a fairy, not a picture.
Okay, see.
No.
So
I did see one, but I questioned it because it was from here, right? So
yeah, see, I don't know what I'm looking at. I know I ran a ghost tour at one time, and there was a tree, and in front of about 50 people, it lit up like a Christmas tree with all these little lights. And we're all looking at it going, it's like a hedge, right? So we're just like, what is this? And all kinds of people got pictures, and I'm like, oh, just send them in. You know, we could see them. Nobody sent them in, but there were so many witnesses. So I don't know. Were we looking at fairies? Like allegedly, this you know, the city had some, but I mean, we don't know. But now, judging by your book, maybe, just maybe.
I'm gonna need this book.
I know.
Yeah, I have to order this book. I saw the fairy, what I believe to be a fairy, at an airport.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I went there with a mentor, and we would go there because the EMFs and how, you know, nobody can kind of crush that when you're learning and your energy. And he was teaching me about that. And I just went like this, and I went, oh my God, did you see that? Like, I don't know if I really did. So
I'd have been the one in the airport going, okay, maybe I'll see this. Was it just me?
Yeah, it was just him and I. And I'm like, Robert, did you see that? And he's like, red. And I'm like, yes, why red?
So
see, I'd be the one in the airport like, well, it's an airport. They're weird. A lot of weird stuff happens in airports.
Yeah, but this is a cargo airport. Like, this is where FedEx goes in, and purely like all of those kind of planes.
They could be hitching a ride, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's not a lot of this airport where I was. It wasn't the Mount Hope one. It was, you know, the couriers are.
There's just a lot of strange energy with airports.
Yeah,
like, there's something about them. They're so liminal that you could tell me you saw Bigfoot in the airport. I'd believe it, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I think a few people look like Bigfoot in the airport, but yeah, we were on the opposite side of a fence, and we were not far from the planes, maybe 50, 60 feet from where they had stopped and they were loading. So it was quite interesting, and I was scared. So anyways, because you hear the story. So I'm going to wait for your expert opinion and experiences.
Well, it's funny, actually, you mentioning the planes and all that, because that makes me think of during World War II, there were some really famous cases of fairies connected to airplanes called gremlins.
Yes.
And it's sort of, it's sort of how gremlins.
Twilight Zone, William Shatner, Gremlin on the Wing.
Yeah, that Twilight Zone episode, I think.
Oh yes, Twilight Zone. Yes.
Yeah, but that's based on actual World War II folklore stories, anecdotes, whatever you want to call it, where the people started talking about how they would see these spirits, these little fairies, and they would mess with the planes. They would break stuff, or kind of like you see in the Twilight Zone episode, but
but gremlins is like mischievous little fairies that like to take inside them. So
you could have seen a fairy in an airport. That's definitely a thing.
Okay, so I'm not crazy, because he did say don't encourage it, Amelia, and I'm like, who's encouraging anything? I'm still questioning. Did I see it?
Here comes Amelia with her shenanigans. All right,
what is that? Yeah, that explains everything.
So where I'd actually like to start, for people who haven't seen you, is what got you interested in talking about fairies in general, because you have a multitude of books, and I will put, your website and everything on in the stream as we get to the end of the show, so people could go check it out. So take her away, Morgan.
Yeah. So it's kind of a layered story, like so many things are. I'm part of the Irish American diaspora, which is just a fancy way to say my grandfather was from Ireland. And I grew up in a community that had a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot, but who had people who were, first or second degree immigrants. So certain folk beliefs kind of made it over here with that community. And when I was really little, I used to have experiences, and I would see things. And when I would tell my family, because of this sort of cultural thing, they were very accepting of it.
Right.
Like most
that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, most kids, they tell their parents they're seeing fairies or whatever, and their parents are gonna be like, no, fairies aren't real. And my family was just like, oh, okay.
Right.
How many?
Which is great. Which is great.
Yeah. But that was really helpful for me because I was never discouraged from it.
Right.
And it grew into something where I became really interested in having more context for it, having a better understanding kind of what was going on and what I was maybe experiencing or encountering or what have you. So by the time I was in high school, I started really digging into other people's experiences,
right.
also known as folklore.
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah. But I found that really helpful because it not only gave me context, but it made me feel like, there's so many other people who have seen these things and experienced these things. Like there's so much out there of this.
Right.
And it's one of those subjects, I'm sure like anything else in the paranormal, once you start to get into it, it just pulls you in further. It's such a rabbit hole to go down. And the more you think you're learning, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
That's like anything, right? In the paranormal.
So have you had a lot of experiences yourself, or are you still waiting for that manic experience?
I would say I've definitely had an assortment. I guess this
assortment is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Usually when I tell stories, when I talk about experiences I've had, I try to stick with experiences I had in a group so that, there's other people. It's not just my own personal experience. There were other people who experienced it as well. Because I think that for people who are more skeptical, when you can say that there was a group of, 2 or 3 or 6 or whatever people who all saw or experienced something very similar, if not the same, it gives it a little more weight, maybe.
Sure.
Than just me talking about randomness.
Had this thing happen. So what typically, what are the typical, seeing a fairy is never typical, but let's just say a generic experience like, are we just looking at lights in the trees, or are we looking at little beings? What are we looking at exactly? Are we looking at a big menacing, like, big guy, because fairies obviously come in different shapes and sizes, and even Tinkerbell had a temper. So
yeah, people tend to overlook that fact, but yeah, Tinkerbell was pretty vicious.
Oh, come on, she was just sassy.
She was sassy and salty at the same time.
Yeah, I loved her. Very much like me. I have a Tinkerbell hat, and that shouldn't be surprising at all.
Just trying to put a hit out on Wendy,
Right.
Little things.
Right intention.
Yeah. So pretty much, Michelle, for what you said, all of the above.
Okay.
I've definitely talked to people who've had experiences like yours where it was lights, particularly in the trees. They seem to happen in places where you wouldn't experience that. Like where I live, we have fireflies. Some people call them lightning bugs.
Here as well. Yeah, a lot of them. Yes.
And so my first thought around here, when people are like, I saw lights in the trees, I'm like, well, was it fireflies though? Right. But I've heard people talk about that same experience that live in places that don't have that.
Right.
So there's clearly something going on there.
Something to it.
Is it at night, or is it like for me, it was during the day, and it was a tree. There was a tree next to me at the picnic table.
Yeah.
Only one though. Yeah.
All it takes is one.
Oh, okay. Because it was very open. I always understood from what I've seen or heard, that they're very mischievous, and it's not something you want to connect with.
Don't mess with the fairies.
Yes. Don't mess with the fairies. And like if you see them, then they've definitely they made themselves shown, like they show themselves to you for a reason. And I'm like, what the hell? Like I was just really scared, because I know someone who had really bad experiences with them.
Yeah.
And it took them years to, figure out how to handle that, because there's not too many of you around who have these experiences and understand it.
I honestly suspect there's a lot more people who have the experiences, but people don't want to talk about it.
No, I believe that. Yeah.
In our culture, if you talk about seeing a ghost or experiencing a ghost, not that everyone takes that seriously, but there's more of an acceptance of it.
Yes.
Well, because of television.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and ghosts are seen as sort of like it's okay for an adult to say they saw a ghost. When we're talking about fairies, because there's this very strong, and I don't want to get off on a tangent about how this happened, but there's this very strong idea that kind of associates fairies with children. So when you start talking about fairies, immediately people are picturing like the little garden fairies and Tinkerbell and things along those lines. And the where it gets complicated is fairies are such a diverse group. The term has been around for about 700 years now, and up until really recently, it was always used as a generic term. When you say fairy, you could be talking, like you were describing earlier, Michelle, you'd be talking about something that's 7 feet tall and terrifying, or a tiny little light in the trees. You could be talking about, they have fairy dogs and fairy cats and fairy horses that will eat you. I mean, it's a whole wide range. There's a lot going on.
That's a new one. I did not see that coming, I'll tell you. But
one I saw was not cute.
Yeah.
Can we if we can address this comment here?
Sure.
Then we'll be able to keep going. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Amelia.
Thank you. Hi, Adrian. I just tuned in. Thank you for tuning in. Is there a characteristic about Celtic fairies that sets them apart from others? I have seen 3, not including lights in the trees. Wow.
That's such a tricky question, because of what I just said, that there's all this variety.
Right.
It's also important to remember when we use the word fairy, we are generally talking about like the Celtic language cultures, or sometimes like Western Europe more generally, like France. You'll also have fairies.
Yes.
That's actually where we get the English word from, is French originally. So you'll find them there too. But fairy-like beings are everywhere. Every culture you're going to look at is going to have something that would kind of fit the general description of what we would call a fairy. I wouldn't use the term fairy for the ones that are found in like, Korea or Africa or indigenous Americas.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah, they're different, but they're fairy-like. They're very adjacent, So
or being politically correct. Yes.
It makes it tricky when someone has an experience if it's not really obvious what it is, because there's so many things it could be, and usually what it comes down to in identifying, like, is it particularly like a Celtic sort of fairy, is really getting into the nitty gritty of the details of what did it look like? What did it act like? Did it do anything? Did it interact with the person? There's just no really easy way to answer that question. Just to say that it's almost like a process of elimination.
Right. So they're very diverse.
Yes. Sort of like if you see a bird trying to figure out what kind of bird it is. You sort of have to go through and eliminate a bunch of things and sort of try to narrow down to eventually get to what it is.
Right. Well, I think with different folklores, or different cultures, the folklore would be different based on the traditional beliefs and so on and so forth of that area. But correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it was believed, even in North America, since that's where we're going, that the Celts had actually arrived there, like could be even a couple thousand years ago, like not so much just recent, but there's looks that I just was on a show recently, and this is information that had come forward, that they're starting to find, I guess, maybe petroglyphs, or they're starting to find structures that are looking that they are really going back. I mean, if you think about it, there's a Stonehenge in Lake Michigan, which essentially would have to have been pre-Ice Age.
Yeah, very old.
and it resembles the one in England. So it's very, very close.
Yep, I've definitely read some things speculating about them being here at least 1,000 years ago. I don't think we have any firm evidence at this point, but to be fair,
Right.
to it being an open-ended question, for a long time, people used to say that the Vikings had been in North America, the Norse. Now I need to be politically correct. The Norse,
yes,
had been in North America before Columbus, and people always said, "Oh no, that's not true."
Absolutely.
And then they proved it. They found a site in Canada, and I'm not going to remember exactly where in Canada, but
I think it's in Newfoundland, right off the coast, and then again in Nova Scotia. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I cannot speak French, so I apologize for trying to say this, but L'Anse Meadow is the name of it. And
okay, yeah.
I can spell it better than I can say it. But, but they proved that there actually was a Viking settlement there, a significant amount of time ago. So just because we haven't found the evidence necessarily that any of the Celtic cultures had arrived here, I don't think we can totally rule the possibility out. I think it is possible. We just
I agree. I think they got around. I mean, when you think about it, that King Akhenaten had Celts in his private guard, and his daughter Scotia, who went to Scotland, they just found her burial next to like a pub in Ireland, actually.
Yeah, I think that people really underestimate how much trade there was and how far people would travel. There's a site in Northern Ireland, in Armagh. Iwamacha is the Irish name of it. And when they excavate it, like archaeologically, they studied it. They actually found the remains of an African ape there that they thought.
Right.
They thought it'd been ritually offered because it was found with all these other animal bones. But
crazy. I
mean, the fact that this animal was brought all the way from Africa to this spot in Ireland, and we have evidence of it, so much more trade and so much more getting around.
And it didn't freeze.
Yeah.
Pardon?
No, I wonder how it acclimated, because it's cold in the winter in Ireland. It's not warm.
No,
it's like Canada, right? So it's
a little more temperate than Canada would be. They do get snow, but not as much.
No, but I mean, compared to Africa, it's cold, because Ontario's not that bad. Like Southern Ontario, knock on wood, I don't. We've been really good.
So this is going to bring us then to the Celtic Fairies in North America.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, we I don't know, like I said, for 20 years, I've been given stories and sent a couple of pictures. One does look like a golem, actually. But I always scream pareidolia, but they swear up and down that this thing was moving when they were there, right? Like they send me a picture and I just see a picture. Yeah. But their testimonials was no, this thing was moving. So I'm kind of like, I'll send it to you if you want to have a look at it.
I'm in a similar place. Like a lot of people just assume, because I am a firm believer in fairies, obviously. That's why I'm here. It's why I write what I write. But I'm also very skeptical.
Yes.
That's healthy, though. I think that's a good perspective.
You have to be.
I always tell people Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is usually the truth.
Right.
And, a lot of things that are paranormal, not all of them, obviously, there is paranormal stuff out there, but a lot of things you can find explanations for.
Plumbing's a huge one.
Paranormal. If something comes back with a question mark, I'm excited. And only because it's just means you can research it a little more, that it's not. Can it ever be definitive, really, in that sort of a field?
The exciting part of all this is when you eliminate all the stuff that is pareidolia or high electrical magnetic fields or what have you. What you have left is so fascinating. Once you've eliminated all the other things, it's like, well, all that's left
is another question mark. Let's dive in, right? So the adventure continues. So, okay, North America. Where do you want to start? Because there's so many. Again, we're getting into the indigenous folklore of the little people that seem, which I have to assume aren't hobbits. They're like little, like fairy folk, right?
Yep. I had seen a question floating by in the chat about my book and whether I talk about Canada.
Yes.
So I do.
Cat. Yes, that's Cat.
Yep.
There we go.
Canada in there. Canada is definitely in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, we actually start with Canada and then go to the United States and then a little bit of Mexico.
Oh, brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
I apologize that the Mexican chapter is so slim. I do not speak fluent Spanish or much. I speak like toddler Spanish.
Right.
So there were a lot of resources that I just couldn't really access.
You just need a translator and a trip.
I suspect there's a lot more European fairy stories that are in Mexico than what I managed to find, and I was only finding stuff that was in translation. So, but it covered all of that. There's also a really great book, not by me, called Strange Terrain, which is just about Newfoundland, because Newfoundland has ridiculous amounts of fairy folklore.
Yes.
I'm
not surprised because it's the closest part of border of Canada, to Europe, and England, Scotland, Ireland.
It's out there.
Yeah.
But Newfoundland and Nova Scotia have seen so much.
Yep. And there's huge diasporic communities there. There were a lot of Scottish and Irish people that settled there. And then you bring all those beliefs and all those beings, with those communities. So, huge amounts of that for sure.
That's where the slur, the A, like Canada, it says A. I don't say it, but it does come from that. It's very strong in the East Coast because they brought it with them from either Ireland, Scotland, or the Welsh area. So that
would be like, which I would think exactly what Amelia is saying, that a lot of this would come through immigration. But then I think with the indigenous lore, which goes back even further, were they already here?
And herein lies the question. And of course, this is one of those things, there's never going to be a definitive answer, Clearly, there's a lot of indigenous beliefs and spirits here. I'm not going to remember the exact number, but there's hundreds of indigenous groups in the Americas and in North America specifically, I should say. And each of them has their own beliefs that often have these fairy-like, very adjacent beings. And they're not exactly European fairies. Like, we can't do a one-for-one, like this is clearly the same as this. But there's a lot of similarities, a lot of crossover. And then you have, when populations move, when communities move, not only do they bring their beliefs with them, but I believe at least that spirits follow communities. Like, if you have a lot of people that believe in this particular type of spirit or are connected to it or make offerings to it, and a lot of the Celtic fairies are connected to family lines.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That I didn't know.
Yeah. So like one thing that I mentioned in the book is I had gone through all this data to look at different anecdotal accounts we have in the folklore in, I'll say the United States for one example. And the most common type of fairy that we see mentioned is the banshee. And the banshee is a female fairy. Literally, the name means female fairy, who is attached to a family line. And they appear and sort of warn of an impending death. They'll be heard crying or wailing.
The wailing, yeah.
And the wailing is very unearthly, like the way people describe. It's not like just listening to like a woman scream or something. It's if you hear it, they say that you definitely know what it is. But this is a being that would follow a family line, so it makes sense if portions of the family move to, say, the United States, then you're going to start having this being here as well. It'll go where those people go.
Wow. So yeah, I guess, and that makes sense. I guess it would follow the family lines as they immigrated out of the country, which is kind of crazy because you realize how much you're bringing these guys over. And the wailing. I've heard recordings, I think people assume that it's just something more paranormal. They don't realize like La Llorona, that wailing, screeching, like nails on a chalkboard, get out of Dodge sort of screaming.
Oh, I got shivers just as you saying that.
I know. So, okay, so that is interesting. And Aged says, are there any other fairies besides a banshee that
the people
vocalize?
We have a lot of stories of people having conversations with them, across various folklore.
Sure.
People having dreams and encountering them, or having visions and encountering them, but also just literally physically running into them. And I'll give you a quick story. This didn't happen to me, but it's still a good story, so I'm going to share it anyway.
Yeah, no, share it all. It's your show.
I was in Ireland in 2016, in a part of Ireland called Boyle, which is a town sort of in the mid-northwest, and at the edge of Sligo, County Sligo. And I was with a group of people. One of the people I was traveling with, who is still a good friend of mine, is a musician. And fairies tend to be very fond of musicians. They like that energy. They like those people. We have a lot of stories about them. Like they would invite the person into their otherworldly home for a night of entertainment, and then reward them and send them on their way. Like fairies just love musicians. So my friend had decided to go out for a little walk after it was like 8:00 at night. It was dark, just to whatever, have a moment of quiet from the group we were traveling with, which is fair because I can respect why he would want some quiet.
I like the quiet for sure.
He was walking down this little path by the woods, and we're not out in the middle of nowhere, but it was a little bit isolated, and he started hearing voices in the woods. And so he stopped to kind of try to figure out, like, were there people in the woods? Like, what was going on? And then he hears someone say directly to him, "Why don't you come join us?" And then he turned around and came back inside.
Go figure.
Yeah, there were no people. Well, there were people. There were no humans in the woods.
No, and when they invite you, isn't that something like, have people disappeared?
Yeah.
Have they not?
You need to be cautious.
One of these kind of invitations.
He's a musician, so he probably would have been okay.
Right.
Okay. But I'll give you another story. This isn't a personal one, but this is one that I read in a it's an anthology called The Good People. It came out in 1991. And this is a Canadian story. This happened in Canada. I do not remember exactly where, but it was a man who was a logger. He was working with a group of people out logging in the woods, and they took their lunch break. And he decided to kind of go off, by himself, again, have a little quiet lunch, away from the rest of the guys. Well, lunchtime's over. They all go to get back to work. The guy's nowhere to be found. So they start looking for him. They can't find him. They have no idea where he went. This ends up becoming a whole thing. And 3 days later, they're back to work, mostly in the same location, same general area. And suddenly he comes walking out of the trees, and they're all like, "Where have you been? Like, people have been looking for you. Everyone thought you were missing. We were searching the woods. It was a whole thing." And he thinks they're joking with him. And he's like, "Oh, very funny. I just finished my lunch and came right back," because he thought only an hour had gone by. And and they're trying to convince him, like, "No, you've been gone for 3 days." And he's like, "No, I went in the woods and I ran into this group of people who asked me to join them." So he sat down and had his lunch with this group of people who he thought were just like, hiking in the woods or whatever. And finally they did convince him that he'd actually had been gone for 3 days, because he had.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover with fairy stories and UFO abduction stories.
Yeah, missing time.
Yep.
Right.
Missing
So,
time.
which brings me to this, Morgan, because there are so many, stories of the Fae, throughout ancient cultures and how they coexisted with humans quite nicely, and people looked at them as oracles, and it was a good union for the most part in some different parts of the world, until a certain religious institution came into play and started convincing people that you can't trust them. The magic it's the devil's work, something along those lines. So, could they have been, like, I'm going to put it out there. Are they a race of ET?
That's another of those open questions.
I have to do it because of the missing time thing. So.
Yeah, no, and they're actually, there's a really good book by Joshua Cutchin called Trojan Feast, which I recommend anyone who's interested in this particular subject. So I know a lot about it, but Joshua knows a lot more about it.
Okay, I'm going to write that down. Trojan Feast?
Yeah, Trojan Feast.
Okay.
And when you compare specific things to do with hallmarks, we'll say, of like alien abductions or alien encounters and fairy encounters, like a one-to-one list, there's a lot of crossover. Things like the missing time, things like distortions with the experience itself, like not being able to remember clearly afterwards what exactly happened. There's some crossover with food, all sorts of stuff. And this becomes sort of one of these controversies, like low-key controversies, between the ufologist community and like the more fairy folklore community, where a lot of fairy folklore-based people will say alien abductions and UFO stuff are just modern understandings of fairies. That people who don't have an understanding of fairies but have like a sci-fi or science understanding, they'll just call them aliens. The lights in the woods, which a lot of people have with UFO experiences, people have that with fairy experiences.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, the UFO community will say the exact opposite, that the old fairy folklore and the old stories of fairies were just people having UFO and alien experiences that didn't have another name for it.
Right.
Fairies.
Got it. So it's a double-edged sword, much like, I personally think everything connects in one form or another. There's so many, it's all high strangeness for the most part. It's, the paranormal and ufology go hand in hand, right down to some of the same abductees will say, I experienced this. And people in paranormal say, oh, it's a demon thing. It's like, so you're getting into crazy things. So why not?
We're all just struggling to put vocabulary on these
Makes
things.
sense. Yes. I agree with you. On that. Okay. So we are, again, in North America. So the fairy lights seem to be really big in North America.
Yeah, like you do hear a lot of that here.
Yes. Yeah. I know for myself, I'd gotten a lot of people. I will try to find this photo, because back when these were sent to me, they were hard copies. I just sort of had to try to, photograph them and send them on just to make it digital, because I would just, get things handed to me, mailed to me. And the one that I saw, I'm just trying to remember where it was. It was on the East Coast, whether it was Canada or the United States. And it was at a marina, it looked like, with all these like bright lights in the middle of the day, just in, just there in the air, but there's nothing, the bright light. I don't know. Is it like the sun reflecting on your lens? Is it just like little star things? So aside from,
that's where we get into that process of elimination. I've certainly seen a lot of pictures, a lot of pictures,
right,
where it's pretty clearly it's camera flare, or it's, the way the sun is being picked up by the lens, or, something. But then there's always that percentage. There's always those pictures that you just can't explain. That there is no, like, there's no rational I don't want to even say rational because that doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean? Like there's no technical
Yes.
explanation. And then it's like, well, then what are you left with?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
we're back to that same, the continuation of following through with further research. And but there, there's something to it, because people are diehard. Some people are diehard with fairy folk. Have you researched the fairies out in Lilydale?
I haven't. Sometime I would like to travel there.
You know what? I've been a few times, and they have, part of the forest. It's all fairy trees. Everything is dedicated to the fairies, and they will talk to you about stories like that. So
yeah, no, I'd love to have a chance to, because I definitely think there's particular places, especially in North America and in the US and Canada and Mexico, that seem to have a much higher percentage of these things. There's a state park not too far from where I live where a lot of very weird things happen.
Do you know why? They're more prone to one area over another?
No matter where we look in the folklore or the modern stuff or any of it, it just seems to be something with fairies of any kind, that they tend to claim particular locations and they sort of consider those places to be their places.
Okay.
And they can be a little territorial. It can be
like a chihuahua,
like gnomes,
like a chihuahua.
Chihuahua's like a gnome.
Chihuahuas, like, they're cuter, but yes, I agree with Michelle. The Satan's minions,
because there are gnome sightings. Do they fall under like the Fae? Do they fall under that sort of culture?
So this is a huge debate, which I love.
She hates gnomes. I'm just
pointy hat and all.
Everything with fairies is argued about,
right?
Basically. Even the use of the term fairy right now in academia, at least, there's a huge argument over whether it should even be used or something else should be used. It's the whole thing.
It's very stereotypical, I guess.
Yeah. So whether gnomes are considered fairies is going to depend entirely on who you're talking to. But you're talking to me, and I consider all of that under this broad umbrella. But I'll tell you a fun gnome story since you don't like them.
I think they're cute.
There was a really fascinating thing that happened. I want to say it was the late 1970s in England, where some school children, and there was a group of them, were in this park and related the story afterwards. There's a whole long thing about how they ended up telling the story, but they encountered a group of what they described as gnomes in little tiny cars. And the gnomes they were not nice gnomes. The gnomes ended up chasing the kids, and the kids were like running, trying to get away from them. There was a whole bunch of gnomes and a whole bunch of children, and it was the whole thing. Walleton Park gnomes. If you look that up, you can find the much more detailed, better story than what I just.
Wow.
I'll tell you something. They could be hostile. Look at was it Norway when they were building a highway and gnomes were sabotaging them? This was actually in the newspapers, and they finally went, because there's a big tree there, and they were going to take it down. So this highway splits now and goes around this tree, and the gnomes left them. I know they had to protect them because it was sabotaging everything. But the reason I'm
territorial stuff.
Say it's gnome stuff. I don't know. I saw a video once, as all it took was this one freaking video, and it was in Chile, and it was there were people, the police were there, and there was this guy with a camera phone or something, and he's going, "What is that?" And you could see there was a police car there, so I don't know, got yanked over, what the deal was. So they zoom in on this thing, and it's a freaking gnome, 100%. It's short, chubby little thing with this pointy hat, and it looks over, and it gives this little scowl, and then it sidesteps across the freaking road like one of these. I'm like, it freaked me out. I just looked at that and I'm thinking, I would not want you in my garden. Because
I like the Santa ones.
They get a bit territorial as well, right? So
yeah, in South America and in Mexico, they have a being, they call it a duende. And it's very much like a gnome, or sometimes they'll translate as like leprechaun, but I would
that sounds so sexy.
Yeah, it was a
that idea of like,
I'm trying to find you this video seriously, because when I saw it,
I want to see it.
I used to kind of go, oh, where's this folklore? Then I saw this video and you hear them talking, the Chilean. I'm just going, okay, I don't know what the heck you're saying, but I too am in awe of whatever the hell that is.
But, and I don't want to be there. Please give me the city name now.
So
are trolls and ogres, are they part of this as well? Or are those fantasy?
I would sort of loosely put them. I don't know as much about ogres because that's more English folklore.
Is it okay? I don't know anything about them other than Shrek.
I mean, Shrek is the best.
I had to watch a lot of Disney. I had a girl, so yeah.
No, nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
But trolls are actually a very old folk belief in Norse areas. So like Norway, Sweden, Iceland. And they're really kind of fascinating. And I would kind of lump this in the general category of what we're talking about.
Okay.
These sort of otherworldly beings.
Different,
Are they the ones under the bridges? Is it the trolls?
Yeah, there's trolls under bridges. In Iceland, you have a whole range of trolls, from like trolls that are gigantic to trolls that are like human-sized. In Orkney, which is an island off the coast of England that has it was basically taken over by the Norse when the Norse were busy raiding everyone. So the culture there is pretty much all Norse-based culture now. They call them trows, which is just, it was originally troll, but in the...
Troll with a drawl. Yeah. Troll. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, and they're a really fascinating blend between sort of what we would expect of trolls in the more Nordic countries and what we'd expect of fairies in the more Celtic countries. So, and I should have added at the beginning, there are a lot of fairies in Celtic language, culture, belief that are very human-like. They look very human, no pointed ears, no wings, but they're just very magical. And they're not actually human. They just can appear that way.
So projecting maybe to us how they want us to see them or perceive them.
I'm glad you said that, because that's actually one of the things that currently is being really discussed and debated in a lot of the communities, both the folklorist community and the people who actively believe in these things. Because, so I'll use wings as an example. In all the older folklore, fairies don't have wings. They fly through magic, not through wings. And then we start to see wings coming in the theater as a way to show the audience, like, oh, this character is supposed to be a fairy. And then into artwork, and then into fiction. But now people are actually relating encounters where they're seeing winged fairies. And this has been going on since like the 70s and 80s now. So I say now like it's not the last 50 years.
Right.
I'm on fairy time, sorry. So now in the last 50 years, we're seeing people say, oh, I've seen a fairy that has wings. I personally had an encounter with two of my friends where we saw something that had wings. And the question then becomes, is that what they actually look like? Or is that how they're choosing to be perceived? Is that what they're projecting, having us think we're seeing? Because that's what we expect.
Can I pose this question? Could it be a tulpa effect?
That's the thing.
Possible, right?
Like our manifestation of it's like the Santa Claus thing. for example, like the traditional Santa Claus thing, right?
Yeah.
There's a big gnome for you, right? But I know. Sorry, kitties.
That's okay.
But,
Italy has a witch.
but
Yeah.
no, but you know,
Love the
he's
fun. I love the fun is cool.
yeah. See, he's perceived a certain way, but all of a sudden now, like this guy is literally showing up in people's living rooms, and there are a whole array of paranormal stories based around this being who is waking up and not always so jolly, I will have you know. Not jolly at all. It gets pretty upset if you're up.
Yeah.
Like there have been crazy stories surrounding it.
Yeah, no, I believe it. It's fascinating to me the way that a lot of these things seem to be affected by human perception.
Mhm.
And you know, the big debate in the fairy community, because fairies have always been thought to have this power, it's called glamour, where they can affect or influence how humans perceive them, how human senses perceive things. So not just sight, but like hearing, touch, smell, everything. But it leads to that question of, are we seeing what's really there? Or are we seeing what they want us to see? Or are they just catering to our expectations? You know, if you expect Coca-Cola Santa with the, you know, the red hat, and the, you know.
That's what's showing up though.
Right.
And
But
that was invented by Coca-Cola in what, like the 60s or 70s? So why are people having that specific experience?
Right.
With like, this is what they're perceiving. Again, Topa?
That's a tough one.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating question, I think.
Yeah, it was something. I had to do a show on that one time, and I'm thinking, I presented and people were just scratching their heads going, no, that's just, I know. I wish I could remember the researcher's name, but he actually did tons of research and found so many stories. I got to credit him for most of them because I'm thinking, I couldn't believe how many of their stories there actually were on this with the traditional looking
Santa
character.
I believe it. Because like I said earlier, I think that a lot of people have a lot more experiences than we think. Just people don't want to talk about it. The number of people I've had approach me privately and say they've never told this to anyone before, but they tell me because they know I'll believe them, that I'm not going to be, you know, skeptical or critical. And I think so many people, you know, if you wouldn't necessarily tell someone I saw evil Santa who yelled at me for being awake.
I know. And you're an adult.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But if you had if you had an encounter with someone or you ran across someone who was like, I'm collecting stories about this, and you feel like this is someone who's going to listen to you uncritically, you're going to be much more likely to admit, you know, your experience that you might not tell most people because you don't want to get
I think so. I've had people tell me strange things. They pull, especially elderly people, pull you aside because they don't want anybody else to hear them. And they're just like, it's like, wow, okay. But this makes sense because children manifesting Santa, children are little psychics, right? So I think they absolutely could manifest that
That's a
sort
lot of like anxious energy at Christmas for a child.
Yeah, there's for a long time people have said when it comes to fairies, children are more likely to see them. And I don't know that it's that children are more likely to see them as that children are more likely not to rationalize it away. You know, if a child sees lights in the trees or, you know, a tiny little human with wings or whatever, that's they're just going to take that for what it is. This is what they saw. If an adult sees it, they're going to talk themselves out of it. Well, that's not possible. It was like ghost light. Yeah. Like that's the great thing about children is they don't do that.
No. Okay. So, Amelia, do you have a question before I go?
No, I totally am with you on that because I questioned the fairy. It's like, why I don't question ghosts? Because I've seen them my whole life. It's normal for me. But the fairy, like if that even was a fairy, I'm not going to say for sure, but I would love to see video footage.
Yeah.
I would just.
I could send you video footage of a freaking gnome.
Oh yeah, I want to see that. You've never shared that with me. I want to see that.
I have to find it. It's not like I keep it in my stash. I don't particularly want to keep looking
Your
at
first 10 videos? No.
No.
It's somewhere on an old iPhone 4.
Yeah, no. But I will find it.
Something
just
she can't access and has to go through storage to get. Yeah. Well, you have so much stuff, though. So much evidence of everything. So
some things I just don't want to go there anymore.
No, there must be some kind of. I wonder if you had an experience in a past life that, or this life, or this life.
I spent like almost like weeks in Romania, and for some reason,
that's
my padres thought it would be hysterical because it must have been the year of the gnome, because there were freaking gnome statues everywhere. So we're staying in this villa, and then they thought it would be funny that when I opened the door to the terrace, the gnomes everywhere. It was just like it was the thing of the year. I opened the door and I'm just like, not funny.
I've got to talk to one of my daughter's friends was born in Romania.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
I gotta ask her because I've never seen gnomes on her social media.
They were everywhere. I think it was just the souvenir of the year. And lawn ornaments, gnomes everywhere. You would go to a lot of these side touristy places. Gnomes of all sizes.
You would think they just have lads everywhere.
They knew you were coming.
They did. They must have known I was coming.
Adriana called ahead.
It's just like, it's not a fear thing as it is an irritation thing. Ever since I saw that video, I'm like, this, So anyway, that's all that is. But I
didn't have a mother who put them in her garden. I was lucky.
My grandmother had them and gave them to my daughter. She goes, I put them in the garden? No. No, you cannot.
In your house.
One day you'll have
in your own house.
Yeah. Take them with you. Thank you, grandmother. So anyway, aside from that, what are the most you get into the different indigenous communities and folklore? What are the most common when they're talking about little people? Because the Mi'kmaq were really big into the little people and different variations.
It's like anything else, is going to depend on the culture. And I only know a few, so I don't want to make too many generalizations because I'm going to see something and then people in a completely different culture are going to be like, that doesn't apply to us. So for example, the Mohegan tribe, which is in the Northeast US, they have beings called Michelederocher. And Michelederocher are like very short, human-looking beings. So very similar to a lot of the fairies. They can be helpful or they can be dangerous, depending on if you're respectful to them. They don't like being looked at or stared at. So if they're around, you're supposed to not.
I'd be in trouble off the back. They'd be like, what the hell is that? So
I don't like being looked at or stared at either.
Yeah, if they like you, they'll like help you. They'll help you find food or find your way or whatever. If they don't like you, they're going to make your life really difficult. Which is again very similar to the Celtic types of fairies, where they like you, they can give you good luck, they can give you health, they can do all sorts of good stuff. And if they don't like you or they're upset with you, they can do the opposite of all of that.
I'll bet they could.
Little thing. So very similar.
Is this why people, will, like I mentioned in Lily Dells, and actually Adrian was thinking the same thing, fairy doors and such. Is this a real thing, or is just something to appease the little,
or is it just Keebler?
Yeah. Coming out of those doors, Morgan. So
everything's a reference to pop culture with me. I apologize right now.
That's fine. I'm pretty fluent in pop culture, so we're good.
Me too. That's it for me.
Fairy doors. So there's two things you might be talking about with fairy doors. I'm just going to touch on both, so I'm covering all my bases here. Some people refer to a fairy door as like a natural doorway looking thing in a tree. So if it has if the roots form a doorway, if it's got like a hollow forms a doorway. Some people will call that a fairy door.
Mhm.
That I've only heard of more recently. And I think it's something that grew out of the artificial ones. The artificial ones I'm about to like make a lot of people sad, so I apologize in advance. The artificial decorative ones started in 1991 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It was an artist whose wife was a preschool teacher, and for fun for her kids, he would make these little fairy doors, and he would like make them very involved. Like you could open the door, it would be almost like a little dollhouse with furniture in a little room. And from there, he started kind of setting them up on the street. And I'm trying to remember exactly how that happened, because, of course, now that I'm telling this story, I can't remember. But it kind of went from there. People liked the idea, and it spread. And then there's a company now in Ireland, the Irish Fairy Door Company, that makes them and sells them with little kits and a little contract you have to sign. I do not recommend people do that, by the way. Don't sign contracts with fairies.
No, you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
You really don't know. You shouldn't be signing any contracts.
Right. And maybe don't set up a doorway in your child's room that's supposed to open for like random otherworldly beings. Just my personal view on it.
And yeah, that would make sense.
That makes
Kids,
a lot of
don't
sense.
do that at home, kids.
Because it can open up the doorway to many things.
You don't know what's going to come through.
No.
But
especially
yeah,
with kids.
Yes, especially with kids. In the last, 30, 34, 33 years since this has started, it has become extremely widespread. Like fairy doors are everywhere. People do fairy villages now.
Oh yeah,
that's what Wayne just
says.
Yeah.
But the guy he's talking about, I think, he believed that there were fairies on his property, and apparently this village that he built was quite elaborate. And I think when he passed away, people were just kind of like, what is this? Like, it was so well done.
Yeah.
So obviously he felt, but that was he something along the lines, Wayne, just refresh my memory. Was it because he was appeasing them or honoring them all at the same time?
Was he their slave?
Right. Yeah.
There's a place in Connecticut called the Fairy Village, which is currently under threat. They might tear it down, which would be very sad. But it was built, oh my God, like decades and decades and forever ago, originally as a tourist attraction. And it's this very elaborate, it's all these little concrete houses and all of this stuff. And when it was up and running, it was pretty amazing, I'm sure. But of course, he went out of business or moved away, passed away, and it's all fallen into disrepair. But now there's all these stories that have developed around it, and people will go visit it because they do believe that there's a lot of fairy presence there. There's a seat there that is supposed to be the fairy king's throne, and if you sit on it, it'll make you crazy. All sorts of great stuff. So I think it's that connection between they're drawn to places, they're connected to places. Some people can sense that, and then they do these things. They make the fairy villages. They put this work and this energy into it as a sort of offering to them or welcoming to them, gift to them, however you want to look at it. And then it just brings more of that energy in. Then you get more of that.
Is the fairy garden the one that spirals that you walk? Oh, it's so pretty. I find it very relaxing. Yeah.
The Isle of Skye.
Is that what it's called? Oh.
No, the fairy circles.
Yes.
When I was in the Isle of Skye, there was one there. And up at the top, there was the Fairy King Grotto.
Yep, the fairy den.
Right? Yes. Yeah. And I know, because my son's like, wonder what's in there. I'm like, I don't know, but your little behind's much smaller than mine. I say go take one for the team and find out what's in it. He's in his 20s. He's like, all right, I'll do it.
Yeah, ask him now.
His legs are sticking out. What's up? What are you saying? But apparently people would get all kinds of experiences up there. Have you been to that one, Morgan, with the fairy circles and the fairy
I actually
Springs?
haven't ever been to Scotland.
Oh.
But the Isle of Skye, it's very famous, the fairy
Yes.
glen there. So
Yes.
I've seen pictures. I've heard a lot of stories about it. I do know
beautiful.
other people that have gone. I'll
Yeah.
get to Scotland eventually. I just haven't.
Scotland
gosh.
and Ireland are just
It's
such beautiful
beautiful.
countries. Yeah.
You know, it's beautiful. You could feel the area. It's quite magical.
Yeah, lots
And
of energy.
And you could see how it makes people feel when they're there. It's just, it's hard to explain, but you feel it's such a light feeling, and you just walk away feeling like amazing. It's like, God, you know, there's something there.
Yeah, that you get that connection to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you do. It's incredible. Mind you, I think the Isle of Skye in general is just a really incredible
Magical.
location as well, with all the mountains and the water, and it's just,
So magical.
you know,
I could live there.
yeah, gotta visit.
No internet.
If you guys
I'm good.
haven't, you got to. It's just amazing. So
I don't know if I could survive without internet.
yeah. Now you can get it up there. I was up there everywhere, just taking pictures and flashing them off on my social media. I'll just share my experiences with people, you know. It's funny, Wayne says that we have like a hobbit hut. Realistically, what it was, it's a tree trunk that was an artisan had just done incredible things with those beautiful red doors, which masked my front door, which is why we had it. But the owners called it a gnome home. It is now being renamed the Hobbit Hut.
The Hobbit Hut. I love that.
What do I call it? No, seriously. Like, I'm just like, no. That can't be a thing. But yeah. Anyway. So, okay. So I guess so the Indigenous all have different names for them, different experiences. Little people are pretty much what we are calling them, right? They're little people.
It's a pretty common term for them. Cherokee have the Yunvit Sundi, which I believe, and I should know this because I used to speak it, but I believe means little people. And please don't yell at me in the comments if it doesn't, because
nobody will get. We've got a great
language, so sadly. But sort of similar in, again, concept to what we find in Europe with, or even with the Makiawisa, with the Mohegans, can be helpful if you're respectful.
Right.
If you're not respectful, then they are definitely going to cause you problems.
So what about fairy mounds?
Yep, that's
Is it exactly like it sounds? You're just going to dig down. You're going to find something magical. You're just going to disappear, or you're going to find what's with the fairy mound.
If you dig down, you're really going to make them angry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think mounds. I think burial or habit. Like some sort of a habitat of sorts.
I'd be upset if somebody put a shovel to my roof.
So there's the term in Irish and Scottish is she, and it does not. It's not the pronoun. It means like otherworldly. Well, I shouldn't say that. In Irish, actually, is also a pronoun. There's a homonym, but not going to get into language stuff. She means fairy hill or fairy mound, otherworldly hill, otherworldly mound, and the idea is more that not that they literally live inside the hill, so much as that's an entrance into their world.
Wow.
But there is a lot of crossover with a lot of these locations in Ireland and Scotland are Neolithic or Bronze Age burial mounds. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And we do have stories of, for example, there's a story in Galway of a fairy king abducted this woman. The woman's husband took exception to that and decided to try to get her back. And he wasn't having any luck, so he started digging into the fairy hill and putting salt in, which salt is not something they really particularly like. I mean, also not something you really want to be putting in the ground because it'll screw up the soil,
right?
Kill all the plants. But it worked, and he got his wife back because the fairies were like,
"Wow,
take her, stop digging into our hill."
I want to ask you a question. This is coming from a supernatural episode, okay?
Get the salt.
I mean, I'm Jean. Get the salt. I'm that person.
I had to.
Yeah. I'm not. Michelle's very calm.
Quiet.
Yeah. I know there was an episode where the man was a watchmaker and he was fixing watches and he had elves. And they were nasty elves. But if you gave them sweet cream and sugar, like the way you would distract them is to drop sugar because they feel compelled to count every. Is that like is that lore or is it?
Yep.
Because they're really I'm really impressed by Supernatural. I'm not gonna lie.
It has its moments. Horribly mispronounced Samhain, but it has its moments.
Yes.
So giving dairy products is very traditional. And that's actually not just traditional with Celtic fairies. Like, I have a friend who is a Tibetan Buddhist, and he told me that they do that to appease spirits in Tibet as well. They give them milk or dairy. There's at least one kind of spirit in Africa, and I want to say Kenya, but I might be wrong. I might be misremembering it, that they give milk to.
Yeah, there's one in Africa where it's citrus. It's fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fruit's another big one. But yeah, so the show having the fairies be given sweet milk or milk or cream, that is very traditional. And then there's also some separate folklore with some types of fairies. Not all of them, but some of them, that they have to stop and count things like sugar or seeds, grains of salt, things like that. And people would use that as a defense against them. Because by the time they're done counting, it's too late for them to do whatever mischief they were there to do.
It's a good distraction.
Yeah. But it's kind of like, and it's also with vampire folklore. The idea that they have obsessive compulsive need to count things.
Right.
Oh, I didn't. It's so cool. True. See, they're not too bad, Supernatural.
No.
Supernatural. I wouldn't give them 100%, but they're
because it's entertainment. Yeah, it's entertainment. But there's a lot of stuff in there. They always go for the lore. Should I read it?
I appreciate that.
This is interesting. And, with the fairy rings, I think when you have to leave an offering. I dumped all kinds of change in that fairy ring because I was walking around inside of it. So I wonder if that, leaving, some people were leaving seashells. Some people were leaving different little baubles. I left coins. So
what I've heard was the coins.
Yeah. They like shiny things, silver, stuff like that.
They're also like crows.
And I think that story, the person was saying they had a fairy ring at work and a girl hopped in the middle and said, "Come and get me." And a week later slipped on nothing and broke her ankle. That's the disrespect coming in.
Yes.
Like jumping in and then saying, "Oh, come and get me." That's never going to end well. And there's all kinds of stories about people who, "Oh, I don't believe in this. Oh, this is just silly." And then inevitably, something happens to change their mind.
It's the same in a haunted house. You provoke, you're going to pay. It's simple. Yeah. It's understandable.
They don't like being challenged. They don't like being insulted.
No.
So yeah, as soon as you say "come and get me," you're not going to like what happens.
That's an invitation. And it's careful what you wish for is what I always say. Right. We're just going to take a quick station and sponsor ID, and then I will come up to this question.
I'm never ready when she says this. It's
what?
Bad. I said I'm never ready.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Because I'm so into this. Okay. You are listening to The Outer Realm with MicheleDerocher and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 107.7 FM radio, as well as on the Gulf Coast, on 105.3 FM. We're live on Roku TV, Rumble, YouTube, X, and Facebook group pages. I'm losing it. Listen to us on Alexa Prime and approximately 250 streaming platforms or more. Our special guest tonight is friend Morgan Daimler, and she is a teacher as well as an author. We're talking all about the Fae tonight. Very interesting and never gets boring. I love this. Too bad we don't have a 4-hour show. but we can bring her back. Now for our big moment of gratitude, of course, never forgetting Folgers Coffee from our first episode with UPRN. We thank you and Joel Montaldo, network owner and our producer, for your continued support and sponsoring our show. We love you very mucho. Our fabulous banner and promo media is courtesy of Steve McGinnis, horror illustrator and a commissioned artist as well. He creates custom pieces. So if you're into something and you love his style, because
like
he is
fairies.
Yes, or pet portraits, like Michelle has often said. He is a fantastic artist, truly gifted. He can be found on Facebook. Thank you so much, Steve. Our intro is courtesy of Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, also known as Justin Snicker. He is an award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp and stream him on any platform you normally use. Find Dr. Snick on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you, Justin. Lastly, it's the scolding moment, the scolding paragraph. Are you watching this episode right now? Are you listening? Wherever you are, please kindly give us a like, subscribe, smash that notifications button so you never miss a show. And if you could kindly share us with your friends and family, help us grow on social media so we can continue bringing you the best in their fields. Thank you.
All right. So we are back.
Yay.
There's the first question. Yeah.
Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Thank you. What kind of fairies are in the Pacific Northwest?
It's a good question. For indigenous types of spirits, I don't know.
I love that. Brutally honest. This is good.
I'm always honest, and there are certain things I do know, and there are certain things I don't.
I love you. Yeah.
Yeah, your best bet if you want to know what indigenous beings are there is to look into what tribal nations were originally in that area, and then look at what their beliefs are or were, depending. If we're talking about what sort of European fairies would be there, you want to look at which cultural groups primarily have settled there. So the reason in Newfoundland that you have what you have is because there are a lot of Irish and Scottish people who have settled there. If you look somewhere that has, say, a big German population or Swedish population in the Americas, then you're going to find a lot of types of fairy beings that we would expect to see with those cultures. If you have an area that has, for example, a lot of Chinese immigration, a lot of Chinese immigrants had settled that area, which I know happens in parts of the Northwest with the railroads and the mining, then you're going to see a lot of spirits connected to that sort of a culture. Because like I said, they seem to go where the humans connected to them go. If you're in more of the, I don't think this is true of the Pacific Northwest, but areas that have a lot of mining communities, there tended to be a lot of Welsh immigrants because Wales has a lot of mining. So you get a lot of Welsh spirits and Welsh fairies. There's a particular type of mine fairy called a knocker in Wales, and in the US we call them Tommy knockers.
That's right. Oh, that's right.
That's
and
where
those
that
are
comes from?
Yeah, that's where it comes from. So those would be a type of fairy being or a spirit that has come over and now is found over here, sort of in connection with those communities. So that's what I would recommend for your specific area if you're curious what might be around there.
All right, next question.
Oh, hi, Heidi. How to know if something is a fairy or another kind of elemental?
That, again, we get into this sort of process of elimination. Generally, with the different kind of good folk, the different kind of fairies, they can choose to be visible or they can choose to be invisible to humans. When people do see them, it's much more common to get that out of the corner of your eye. You see movement, but when you turn, nothing's there. or you'll get a quick glimpse of something that, unlike a ghost or, you know, that sort of spirit, would be a fully formed, complete figure. But then when you like look back, it's gone. It was there, it's gone. I used to say that a good way to tell between ghosts and fairies was electronics, but I stand corrected.
Right.
Because it turns out that fairies will also drain electronics and batteries. Which I learned from a friend of mine in Ireland who had gone to record at a location and found her batteries kept very quickly draining.
Yeah, any energy being, right? Any energy being. I mean, even people who not hunt, because it's such an awful word, but look for Bigfoot and, you know, to have this evidence of them and catch everything, have said that their cameras have completely died.
Yeah, there's just something about this sort of phenomena that seems to have that effect. One thing I have noticed is that, again, very generally speaking, dogs don't seem to be bothered by fairies when fairies are around, for the most part.
That's hilarious. Maybe they like dogs?
I think they like dogs more maybe than some other kinds of animals. Cats, however...
Cats are a different character altogether, and aliens. They're fun. Yeah.
It's maybe because people will use dogs on like ghost investigations, because dogs are supposed to be very sensitive to ghosts. But that wouldn't work with fairies because they don't seem to care, and the fairies don't seem to care about the dogs. But cats, in you know, from what I've seen and people I've talked to, mostly seem to ignore ghosts, but will get really weird with fairies, like really weird. And I realize cats are already weird, so like,
cats are weird.
Well, they're fun videos though.
But they're also said to be guardians against ghosts with cats, which is interesting.
Yeah, some cultures, that's true. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but that is true.
Yeah. But so the fairies. Well, they move kind of quick, you know.
Just really quickly to wrap up that answer.
Yes.
Sorry, because I realize I'm getting...
No, it's okay. We got
it's your show. Chill.
Got lots of time.
There is no... One final thing, the difference between telling fairies from like elementals or land spirits or nature spirits or what have you. Fairies can move around, and they can go into houses, out of houses. They can follow people, even across continents, from one house to another. More elemental sorts of spirits don't do that. They tend to be more very, very location specific. Like they will start in that place and stay in that space. And if you encounter them in one place, they're going to be in that place. Whereas fairies go where fairies want to go. And
you'll know if you're bothering them.
Yeah.
I can see them, but I feel them too. It's a weird thing. It's like I can feel the heat with the fire, the cold with the water. It's just a weird thing.
That's cool
for me. Yeah, it was my first experience was with Michelle.
Oh, nice.
It was just one of like, what am I feeling here? What is going on? Yeah.
That's the first time it was confusing.
But we don't have any problems with them. Yeah. Mish, hi Mish. Any reports in Australia?
Oh yeah. Because again, you have a lot of immigrant populations, and a
lot of them British.
Yeah. Without having to keep repeating myself, like I don't know as much about the Aboriginal stuff, so not getting into that. But there's a lot of Irish and Scottish, and I think Welsh as well, and English presence in Australia, settlement in Australia. So I'm aware of quite a lot of stories actually in Australia that would be Celtic types of fairies. My book was focused specifically on North America because I wanted to narrow it down a little bit. But I could have had a whole chapter on Australia as well. There's something you can find free online called the Fairy Census, which is a great name. But it's actually a collection of anecdotes. People would write in with their experiences, and they have a whole selection from Australia if people are curious to learn more about that and kind of what people are experiencing down there.
I guess I should spell fairy correctly. So the Y, not an IE.
I spell it all kinds of ways. I spell it FAER.
FAE is different.
Yeah, I spell it all. It's just whatever mood I'm in.
For finding that particular resource purposes, it is spelled with the Y. The word fairy was not standardized till pretty recently, so it's like the Wild West. Just any combination of letters and vowels that you want.
Play with it.
Well, there's a lot of history here, right?
Yeah, you sometimes see people saying that there's like a difference in meaning depending on the spelling, but that's a super modern idea. Historically, it really was. Like, I have seen some of the best, hilarious spellings for the word fairy you can imagine. You know, just like I said, any combination of letters or vowels, and you're good.
Make it work. Right. See what comes up, you know. So if fairies are, let's say, visiting, or shall we say infiltrating, like if you were we probably infiltrate. So I'm just gonna go there. But anyway, what kind of things should you be looking for? Like, I know with gremlins, they like to hide things, move things around, and you almost have to ask them to put it back. Is it kind of the same thing, and how common is it?
Depends a little on which sort we're talking about.
Okay.
There's definitely sort of a grouping that are prone to or like to be in people's homes, house fairies, we might call them. And they tend to be more mischievous. They like to move stuff around. They like to hide stuff. They like to play jokes, but generally not things that are dangerous or hurtful. Mostly just annoying. So, you know, we sort of have that range of beings. There's a whole other sort of grouping where I've talked to people who have encounters with someone that looks very human, usually shows up at an important time and talks to the person and sort of tells them stuff that they need to hear. And usually about halfway through the conversation or so, the person figures out this is not a human being because they know too much. They're talking about things they shouldn't have knowledge of. But the person is not feeling alarmed about it. You know, it seems like they've known the person for a long time, even though they haven't. And usually the fairy person appears out of nowhere and then disappears kind of inexplicably. So, you know, we also have sort of that range of experiences that people have. And then, of course, the lights. You know, I don't know what the lights are up to, but
I think it's just because it's easy, you know.
I wonder if it's their energy as they're moving. It's just sparking, you know, picking up the static.
Wow. So gardens, if you wanted to attract fairies, what would be the best way to attract fairies? Not gnomes. Don't be laughing, giggling.
Why?
Just fairies.
Why?
You know, like I said, cool Hobbit hut might be a good place to visit.
This gets back into the different types that you're going to have out there. So there are certainly some that are a little safer-ish.
Safe is good.
To interact with or have around you. And the ones that are associated with gardens tend to be kind of in that category. And I know people that's all that they do. They only connect to these particular types of fairies. This is sort of their whole thing. And for those, you would want to plant things that they are known to like. Pansies, cowslips, foxglove, roses. Have fun with that because roses are super entertaining to try to keep alive.
We have lots of roses. But
do they like lambs?
It's interesting because of the thorns. I would not think that they would be.
Oh, yeah. Actually, a lot of things with thorns are associated with fairies. One of the most famous types of fairy trees in Ireland is the hawthorn.
Right.
And if for people who've never seen a hawthorn, those thorns are not playing.
No, they're pretty hostile.
She's not talking about Nathaniel.
No.
If you think thorns on roses are unpleasant to grab, the thorns on a hawthorn are they can be up to 2 inches long.
They must produce gorgeous roses, though. Do they produce gorgeous roses? Like,
Hawthorn?
Yeah. Or it's just a thorn.
They have nice little flowers. They're little white.
Okay, I've probably seen them and I just don't know.
And then berries. So wildlife tends to like them. They actually are in the rose family. It's the same like general family of plant, hawthorns and roses. But yeah, those thorns do not mess around. And then blackthorns, which you have in Scotland and Ireland and places like that. And those thorns are really nasty.
Yes. Wow. And thistle. There's a lot of itchy thistle in Scotland too. That we have here. We have some here too.
Yeah, beautiful flowers, but everything's spiky on thistle.
Yes. I tend to wonder if it's just a place that they can hide and you're not going to easily get to them. Maybe we should just build them a little mound. I don't know.
Salt air probably kills a lot of stuff too, though. That's probably why it's so thorny.
That just reminds me of that. I don't know if you've seen the movie or if you've read the book, The Secret of Nim.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, the whole thing about they were like in the rose bush because the thorns protected them.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, the property is very much like a British cottage style, and it's just got all kinds of gardens, all kinds of animals, all kinds of trees, and we keep it very friendly for all sorts of life, so to speak, all year round. Well, as long as it doesn't attract crazy things. Wayne swears he's always had a golem around. He's just like, like the golem, traditional, fairy type golem, like Dobby sort of cute golem. Not,
not so cute when you're trying to crochet him. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, but
2 years.
So, and he said like things would just go disappearing, and he would just ask politely, "Can you please put it back?" And it would resurface.
And Dobby's so content with just a sock.
Yeah, the things that tend to be more like around homes, the fairies that tend to be more around homes and gardens and the easier ones to interact with, usually they will take stuff, but if you ask nicely for it back, they usually will return it. And then, sometimes you might have to give them a little butter or milk to help bribe the way. But
remember that, Wayne, butter and milk.
Do they like bread with that? Cereal? I'm not kidding.
So
they just really like dairy products. It's just
that's really cute.
Yeah.
I say, how do you know when you actually have one for sure?
It's if you're not someone who like you don't see them and have direct experiences with them, it becomes that process of elimination. Kind of there's something you've eliminated all of the human world possibilities. It's not electromagnetic fields. It's not all of this other stuff. It's definitely something out of the ordinary, I guess you would say. And then you would look at is it a ghost? No, you can eliminate it's not a ghost. And you just sort of work your way through
back to the
you can also ask them, but I find if you have stuff going on, like we have mentioned, like things disappearing, reappearing, if things seem to be happening that are frustrating and mildly annoying, but also kind of
all the time. I just can't necessarily blame the fairies.
Right. And that's
constant.
Right.
Yeah, you just kind of have to work your way around to it, unless it's something where it's really obvious, and then sometimes it's a little more clear.
I like the fairy houses. I think it's cute when you see parents making them with children and putting them under a tree. I think it's really sweet.
So
is it one of those situations like, Field of Dreams, build it and they will come?
Oh, gosh.
That's the idea.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So after I went off about how much I don't like fairy doors.
Yeah, here we go with the houses.
The whole house now. Okay.
I actually really love fairy houses.
Yeah.
I know that might sound a little contradictory, but hear me out.
Okay.
So first of all, fairy houses have been around for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have them in like Victorian gardens. They even if you go all the way back to like ancient Rome, they would make these little spirit houses for, they didn't call them fairies, of course, but for these specific types of domestic spirits called the lares. So the idea of having a little house that you would build for a particular type of spirit is very, very old. And when I was little, as we've established, I was a very strange child. And I had just started spontaneously building these when I was very young, which again, my family thought was amusing. Always outside, but little rocks and sticks and whatever. And so I've always had a bit of a, I don't know, bias, I guess I'll say, towards fairy houses. I like them. I think the sort of things you're going to attract with that are going to be on the more safe end of the scale. Now, mind you, I personally don't have them inside my house. I do them more like out in the garden or out in the yard.
Yeah.
To get that sort of an energy coming in. But I do know people that use them inside. There's a whole debate about whether that's a good idea or not, just in general.
Right? Yeah. I mean, almost be like trapping them in a way, or if they were indoors, or is it just a dimensional thing altogether, despite where it is?
I would say it's maybe more of a dimensional thing, but you're inviting that energy into your home, and that energy can be fairly chaotic. So that's fine in your yard.
Yes.
Or in your garden, but it can be a little intense, maybe.
Right. Yes.
So, but yeah, I'm surprisingly pro fairy house.
Wow. Okay. Well, not a bad
know.
thing. Wayne, we need fairy houses for outside.
There you go.
Put them away
You
from
could
the
start
Hobbit
building. I'd be afraid to build them with stuff from outside, because I think where we live, when it does snow, it can get really bad.
But if it's dimensional, I think there's sort of,
they can just slide in there.
Yeah. There's a difference.
Yeah, no.
Very fairy.
I have so much stuff in my backyard. If I had it a village, my husband would lose his mind.
The fairy F-A-I-R-Y versus the fairy F-A-E-R-Y. There are people now who will tell you that there is a difference, that one is the real type of fairy and the other one's like the made up Victorian children's fairy. So you will find people who are very firm about that. It's kind of a modern thing. Historically, like I said, you would just spell it however you spelled it, because spelling wasn't standardized. And my personal opinion on it is, unless we're writing, it doesn't matter. Like in this whole conversation, I could have been meaning F-A-I-R-Y the whole time, and you could have been meaning F-A-E-R-Y, and we would have no way to know because we're not spelling it, we're talking about it, and they sound the same.
Well, I like that.
I feel better.
Well, it's what, this has really been awesome, and I would think that I mean, people have already been saying that they've learned so much tonight, and I believe this is your third time on, and I've gone to the website going,
you just keep bringing me
books
back.
happen. I know.
Oh yeah, the books.
I'm like, how do all these books happen?
I write 3-4 books a year, so
okay,
good for you.
I know. So we will have you back on again. And
I have a book coming out in May about love and sex and fairy beliefs. That could be a fun topic.
That could be, if it doesn't get us booted off.
Bleep, 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 bleep.
I know. Bleep, bleep, bleep.
With wings.
We'll do the PG version.
We could do a censored version.
I actually wrote that book because it's the most common questions I get asked.
Well, you never think about it. How do they procreate? Like that's a question. It's a logical question. That's why I didn't ask.
Worded it right would be okay. Because now AI just flags anything that's exciting.
We can call it like amorous and intimate.
Sure.
Yes,
sure,
amorous and intimate.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of puns. It'll be amazing.
In the fairy
can't
world,
wait.
sure. So there it is again.
Beautiful.
tell us what you have coming up and where can people find you and so on and so forth.
Sure. So I am sadly everywhere on social media. Very, very sadly. Always under my name. Yeah. So it'll always be Morgan Daimler, whichever the social media is. And I will say this because now there's so many of these cloned fake accounts out. I never do private readings. I don't hit people up asking for money for anything weird like that. I just mostly talk a lot about fairies on my social media and Irish mythology. Currently writing a book about the fairy courts, which is something we have from Scottish mythology originally that's gotten very widespread. The Seelie and the Unseelie, the good fairies and the bad fairies, that kind of thing.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, so that's my current project. Like I said, it's called Paid with a Kiss, which is the book on love and sex and fairy belief that's coming out next May.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always keeping busy. I'm always up to something.
Good for
Well,
you.
it sounds
We're
quite
grateful.
exciting. I'm going to peruse. We'll line you up for a few dates for sure. I think we're booking into March, for God's sake. So
it goes by so quickly. I cannot believe it's almost December.
I know.
Well,
I
that's
know.
this Sunday. Yeah.
How did that happen, though?
I don't know. I was wishing for it for months, and the summer felt really long this year.
Missing time.
I love Christmas, so for me, it's like,
Yes.
you know, takes me 2 weeks to decorate my house. So,
and I'm counting down to next year's
get along
Halloween.
really well.
Yeah, Michelle's counting down to Halloween. I like Halloween too. If I ever had a party, the one party I haven't had is a Halloween party, and I would love to do that for my friends because I know I'd go like all out with all the crazy stuff, and I take the time to really set the mood.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Yeah, I love it. I love entertaining though. So,
Yes,
and it's been a while with the few things that have been happening. So,
yes,
that's one I haven't been able to do.
Oh, you should. Next year, you definitely should.
I hope so. So.
We're there, the top of the hour. Boo, boo, boo.
This subject, it goes quick.
It does. It does. And it was a lot of fun. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank
you for having me back on.
Oh, we adore you.
I refer you to everybody.
Are you kidding me?
I was on the network, and I'm just like, oh, you guys got to get Morgan on there. You've been on with my friend Vicky from Fika with Vicky.
Oh, isn't she nice?
Yeah, she's really fun.
So nice.
Oh, she's a sweetie.
Vicky's an angel.
And you connected you with another one of our hosts, CL Thomas, who's she's just sweetie as well.
Amazing.
So only connect you with nice people, Morgan.
We only connect with nice people, Morgan.
That's right. Exactly. So anyway, I will be in touch, and we'll set up some more dates for sure.
Sure. And like I said, thank you for having me on. It was really great to talk to you guys again.
Thank you so much, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
And stay safe on Friday.
Black Friday. Yeah.
I never understood that in the US. Give thanks on Thursday, kill your neighbor on Friday.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
The yin, the yang,
Enjoy it. And thank you so much.
All right. Well, everybody, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment of The Outer Realm. Thank you to Morgan Daimler. Thank you. It was just awesome. Big thank you to you guys in the chat room for making it that much more interesting. And to all of you guys who are actually in audio land, we thank you guys for tuning in and hanging in. I've seen a lot of people on Rumble, a lot of people on X. So thank you guys all again. Tomorrow night, okay, we're doing it. We promised you another open mic. I don't know what it is, but you guys sure dig it. So we're going to definitely give it to you. Another open mic, all yours. And we've got some good stuff cooked up. So get your questions and comments ready, and we shall do it. And we always have so much fun doing it with you. So anyway, guys, good night, and we shall see you tomorrow.